All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. Today, me and Nikki are going to be doing our final 7 round mock draft for the New York Jets, a team with a lot of capital and a lot of opportunity ahead over the next two drafts, two first rounders this year. And then next year, they have three where they can do a lot of damage. And obviously, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Arvell Reese, David Bailey, one of those guys is going number two overall, it appears. And I think Reese is probably the way they're going to be leaning. This is a guy who played linebacker at Ohio State, but he does have great versatility. Unreal combo with size and speed, 6'4", 243. He ran like a 4.4 at the combine. Um, Great range, violent finisher. Looks like he'll be moving to a pass rusher, something he didn't really play at Ohio State, but I think he's capable, certainly, and a lot of scouts believe that as well, as he's the top ranked player on pretty much every big board. Only 1 year as a starter, though. Still learning zone principles as a natural linebacker. Needs to find more consistency in that regard. And, learning pass rush moves if they plan to use him full time off the edge, which appears to be in store. Jordan Tyson, Nick, I don't know if he's going to fall this far, but I kept doing the mock and he just kept falling. And, anything can happen, right? But this guy is definitely gaining a lot of momentum to go top 10. But there's other receivers like Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon. So I think a receiver of high caliber will fall to them. And this one, it just happens to be Tyson, a guy who's a very savvy route runner, understands how to attack a defense, very strong versus zone. Just a natural big play caliber player with either hands or his speed, wins vertically, showcases great body control slash leaping ability too when it comes to contested catches. Does need to learn to get better against press man. He's a thinner frame guy, has a good catch radius, but at sometimes is inconsistent at coming down with spectacular catches, even though I certainly have seen a lot of them in his career. And he can be sloppy at times as a route runner, even though he does have that savviness. The Jets, Nick, I think they can be winners in night one if they don't screw this up. I think number two is pretty clear what they're going to do. What do you think is going to happen at 16? Do you think he'll be a receiver, or do you think they'll stay with defense as well?
I think it will be a receiver at 16, and I'll start with number two, where Arvell Reese is getting a lot of momentum the last couple of days, moving towards him being the pick at number two, and I think that'd be a great pick for this Jets team. They need some help on the defensive side of the football. I think Reese is a player that could be really solid. Obviously, he has some work to do, right? Certainly needs to develop his coverage asset, and only was a 1 year starter at Ohio State. 6'4", 240 pounds. I think he's an elite athlete with great strength, really good speed. I think he's a very versatile player that could be moved around in a couple different alignments. Played on the defensive line, played in the box last year. Had 650 snaps for Ohio State, 37 tackles, and only missed four throughout the season. I think he's a player that's really versatile, really deep, and certainly headlines a deep defensive class. He'll be a great player at number two, and I think he'd be really solid. He, is pretty firmly number two on my board, right behind Mendoza. When you get to the 16th pick, I think it's certainly a little more interesting about where the Jets might go here. If they can get Jordan Tyson at 16, I think that's a phenomenal player to add. This is a good spot for the Jets to be, picking twice in the top 20 again. They've done that a couple times recently. I believe they've done it in 2022 as the most recently. So they were able to get some solid picks here, and they were really able to work some solid asset management to get some good pieces. I think this is a team that's got some holes, and Tyson would really fill those holes immediately. He was good last year, 61 grabs, 711 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was really good in 9 games. I think he's a player that's really solid out wide. I think you can get a lot of versatility and use out of him. He's a player that has a lot going for him, and I think he has the great versatility and explosiveness to really excel at this level. He really, is a solid piece overall. I think he can be an all-pro caliber type player in the NFL. This would be a great haul early on if the Jets can get Reese and Tyson in the first 17 picks.
Moving to our next slide here, they also have two early picks in the second round. If Cassius Howell's sitting there, I think they need to go ahead and select him. And then right after that, let's add another corner. And, if this is something that people are going to complain about, I don't think there's any complaints to be had because this team was terrible, Nick. They had 26 sacks, which was second worst in the NFL. They haven't had interception since Rory McIlroy last lost the Masters. It's been that long. And this team late in the year, Nick, they played Trevor Lawrence and Drake May. Gave up 40 plus points in both those games and 5 plus touchdowns to both quarterbacks. This team's not even close because they don't have any good players in those key areas. So Cassius Howell, I think this is something they need to do. Go out there and draft another edge to match with Will McDonald. Good athlete, complete game record of a pass rusher. I love his quickness and bend. Pretty functional strength to be an asset versus the run. Nice chop and inside move. Does lack length, has a little bit of a leaner frame, and he needs to add some size in overall strength, but I think this is a guy that was very impressive in the SEC last year. And then Chris Johnson. This is a guy that might potentially go earlier, might even sneak into the back part of the first round. Great instincts and ball skills. Ran faster at the combine than expected. That really, I think, locks him into the top 50. pretty dangerous in zone. Despite being undersized, looks pretty good in press man, highly impressive athlete. These are two really good defenders, Nick, at key positions for the Jets. I have no problem with them going with two pass rushers in the top 33 because they badly need it. And if they can get some good work out of these talents, they can quickly find themselves with a nicely revamped defense.
The Jets need defensive help. There's no kidding about that. They just cannot force turnovers. They cannot do anything on the defensive side of the football. They have a defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn, so they really want to add some key pieces that he can work with and develop. I think Cassius Howell, if he slips to this position where they can get him at 33, that's a phenomenal add for this Jets team. I think Howell is a phenomenal player out of Texas A&M who has that really solid speed and hand usage that could be really good. I like his burst. He gets off the line very quickly, and I think he can be really good one-on-one in the NFL and really can take on those tackles and have some key moments. Played about 600 snaps last year for A&M. 300 of those were in pass rush. He had 12 sacks, 27 QB hurries in those situations. Played 570 of those outside tackle and was really good in that sort of alignment there. And he had a lot of consistency and really solid moments for the Texas A&M Aggies. I think this is a guy you want to get in your situation. He'll be a big presence on the defensive line that can add a lot of pressure immediately for this Jets team. And then Chris Johnson, they got to fill a hole at cornerback. They trade away Sauce Gardner. They trade away some other pieces. They got to get somebody in there that can play really good football in the secondary. I think Chris Johnson's a guy that's a little bit underrated in a pretty heavy corner class here. I think he's really solid. Not great in press, but he's really solid in off-ball coverage. I think he's a guy that's had some good moments. 635 snaps last year, only gave up 18 receptions on 43 targets, no touchdowns, had 4 picks. Really good in corner and played most of those in corner last year. And I think he's a guy that you can go out there. He'll ball hawk. He'll get some interceptions, which is what this Jets team desperately needs. That'd be a really solid pick for me at 44.
Now moving to our last slide, the final 5 selections that they have. And I know you're going to hate this pick, Nick, and I totally understand it because I alluded to earlier, have 3 first-round picks next year. It's a deep quarterback class. They could trade up the number 1 overall if they wanted to, if they really like the guy. So I think next year's definitely going to be the year where they draft the hopeful future at that position. Garrett Nussmeier here at 103rd pick. I mean, this is still a pretty early selection. You can still get a high quality football player at another position. So maybe this is wasted, and I know you're not going to like it, but Nussmeier, guy's got a great arm, gunslinger type mentality, strong upper body, has a real nice spin on the ball. Last year, he did not impress, though. Was vastly poor when it came to decision making, never really showed great command of the offense that we thought was completely loaded. Nussmeier at quarterback, I think that he could give you a lot of upside due to some of the positive traits he does have, but he's definitely a work in progress, and maybe this is too early for him for this team. Also in the 4th round, another cornerback, Julian Neal, a physical player, can play inside or out, capable in man coverage, has a good burst and long speed, nice lower body explosion, has a desire to wrap up in the run game as well. Not the most fluid when it comes to changing directions, but I think this is a Jets team that, again, needs to continue to add defensive backs because, again, the secondary was terrible last year. Pretty much every position's up for grabs. And I think that this is going to be ideal for them to grab 2 or 3 corners. What do you think of these 4th round selections? One of them, again, I know you're going to hate.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting one with Nussmeier, right? This is a guy that showed a lot at LSU in terms of potential, showed a lot of promise in the past, but he just has not been able to find that consistency. And last year was brutal, below 2,000 yards passing, 12 touchdowns and 5 picks. Had 4,000 the year prior to that, but he just was struggling across the board. And it really wasn't that great. And obviously, he's got a high football IQ and certainly has NFL bloodline and some polish in that regard. But he has some issue, and I think his size a little bit undersized for the NFL. And I really don't know. Like last year, there were some glaring issues and glaring inconsistencies in the tape, which is why he's falling so far down on boards. And this is a Jets team that needs some sort of life at quarterback. I'm just not entirely sure Nussmeier is the answer. I don't really know what they want to do at quarterback. They don't seem to have an idea at all. And I guess, taking a chance on him maybe later in this 4th round at 140 or maybe in the 5th round is not the worst idea in the world, but I don't think at 103, when they have so many more needs they got to fill and so many things they can do at that pick, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Good player. I think he could certainly be a decent backup in the NFL. I just don't think he's a guy that can go be a starter long term in the NFL, and certainly not for a team like the Jets that seems to be snake bitten at quarterback. When you look at Julian Neal, though, I think Neal again kind of fills that need at cornerback. A guy they need to add. Was really solid at corner, 687 snaps last year. 2 picks, only gave up 3 touchdowns on 50 targets. Pretty solid player that's falling a little bit down draft boards just because of some inconsistency and a little bit of sloppiness in tackling last year. But I think Neal is a solid player that would help out this secondary that dearly needs it.
Over looking at the next 3 selections, I have them snagging a linebacker, Caleb Elam Zord. They shockingly added Demario Davis. a great veteran to the middle of this defense, but they still need to add some depth and look to the future because Davis is definitely on the older side. This is a player with good speed, nice eye discipline, does well matching route patterns and zone, a pretty good wrap up tackler. That speed makes him a viable blitzer as well. Biggest problem with him is you're just not sure what you're going to get in terms of balance because he needs more strength to be an impact run defender. Overall, just lacks power when coming downhill, and he's a subpar athlete. So this is a guy that's kind of a risk reward type player. He can definitely help you out in coverage when it comes to being a complete linebacker. Far from it. Nick Barrett after this. I think this is going to be a great player. He might even go earlier than this. I think he's just going to have a good career in the NFL. 6'3", 322, has the physicality to hold up in the pros. He was a standout run defender for South Carolina who gets in well slanting downhill. I've seen him play plenty of games in the SEC against top-tier linemen and have success. So I think Barrett's going to be a great player, and the run defense also could use some help, right? So Barrett, a great value selection late. Harrison Wallace to add one more receiver. A good athlete, great speed to get downfield. Showed out in the playoffs for Ole Miss. Great ball tracking. I think he's a legit vertical threat. This is a receiving room that, again, just needs to continue to add talent. They're going to add one early, and I think adding one late would make a lot of sense as well. I think they like what they have in A.D. Mitchell, and then Garrett Wilson, of course, is a superstar. So you can start to round out this group a little bit more if you can hit on that seventh round selection. What do you make of it?
I think it's certainly an interesting last couple of picks here in round five and then two in the seventh round. I think Elam's Orr is a decent player that's got some potential. I think he's a guy that showed a little bit at TCU last year, 6'2", 230, was solid. 82 total tackles, only missed 10. They played him in the box a lot last year, about 900 snaps. So he's a reliable player. I think getting him late in the fifth round is not the worst idea in the world. Nick Barrett, I think he showed some progress at South Carolina last year. I think he's a player that can be really good in the B gap. He's really solid. Had 2 sacks, 6 QB hurries, and they're just adding depth to the defense here. I like 2 depth pieces to the defensive side of the football. That really works out well for me. Harrison Wallace, I like what he can do. Probably my favorite pick of these later rounds because I think he's a guy that's got a lot of untapped potential. He was really good out wide. Certainly has a lot of speed. Almost 1,000 yards receiving last year and 4 touchdowns. He had 61 grabs. He's a really solid guy. I think his speed and overall size is pretty solid. 6'1", 200 pounds. I think you can hit him in stride, get him into good positions here. And I think these last couple of picks are pretty solid for this Jets team that needs to add some depth, needs to add some talent, especially on the defensive side of the football.
That's it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.